Good mythical afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Ayala with your 7.3 vlog. This is the Federalist in Charge, or John Adams Presidency and Political Parties. As always, please make sure that you are writing down your notes and yet you're reviewing this vlog as many times as possible you need to, so that you are prepared for the next test. As always, there will be a question embedded somewhere in here, so make sure that you are paying attention as we go over this. This is quite a lengthy vlog, so you may want to do this over 1 or 2 sittings, but just giving you a heads up. And please make sure that you are listening to it because it's quite important for you. So this is 7.3, the Federalist in Charge, also known as John Adams' Presidency. So we start talking about where we left off. Washington decides to retire, and he leaves after 2 terms as president, or 8 years. And he does in his farewell address, he warns of a few things. One thing, he warns of the idea of political parties, believing that we are Americans first, everything else is second. Political parties are not the way that the government was structured. He was like, they will be more concerned of what is best for their political parties, the Federalists or the Democratic Republicans at this time, versus what was actually better for the U.S. government and the people there. And if you pay any attention to any of our modern concerns or issues, you notice that Washington would be turning over his grave for this issue. Also, he states that we should not be involved in foreign wars, that if we become too close to European powers and we become involved in foreign wars, that we are just going to spill our blood and treasure for things that we do not want or do not need, and just increase the amount of violence that goes on inside of our nation. And if you notice anything about our history in modern times, this is a major concern in modern times. The idea of, should we be involved in that foreign war? What is the purpose? And does it even make sense? And when we talk about this, it all deals with the idea of foreign policy, or relations with other governments of other countries. For example, France has been our oldest ally. It has been our ally since 1778, if I'm correct, with the battles of Saratoga, all the way through modern days. Britain is one of our oldest allies. After the War of 1812, we'll more or less start getting along afterwards. So it's really kind of interesting when you look at how foreign policy changes throughout time. And I do apologize about that random jump cut. My microphone decided to fall on the floor. So anyway, this is growth of political parties, and so anything with Americans, we're going to disagree with how our nations reign. Heck, we can't figure out what we want to do for dinner, so of course it makes sense that we're going to argue over our government. And what political parties do, they grow out this idea to help people spread their ideas and influence their government. And so when we look at this, what we've got to understand is political parties have platforms. They have major ideas that they look at. For examples, traditionally, the Republicans are very conservative with their social views. They like more traditional values, while the Democrats in modern times have a tendency to be more liberal or more loose with their social values. These are just generalizations. This does not mean that a particular person who is a Democrat or Republican have these beliefs. It is just that what they do is that all these people who believe mostly the same things, they will join a political party to help force or to spread their opinions and get people to go into government. And the first 2 political parties we have are the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. And yes, this is another Federalist term, and it's completely different than the Federalist under the Constitutional Convention and the ratification of the Constitution. Just make sure you keep those 2 separate in your brain. So when we look at it, there are quite a few differences. The Federalists are led by Alexander Hamilton. They believe in a strong national government. They fear mob rule, the idea of people who aren't educated controlling our government. They like a loose construction or interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. They more or less use what we call the necessary and proper clause. Hence, make sure that you know that. The necessary and proper clause, to be able to do anything that the government needs to do. So if you know your Constitution, all the necessary and proper clause, also known as the elastic clause, states is that the U.S. Congress can use their powers to stretch out their powers of the U.S. government and do whatever they believe they deem is necessary to run our government. An example, the FDA, the idea of having a group of people in our government that actually look at our different drugs, our different foods, and make sure they are safe. They also favored the idea of a national bank, of having one place in the national government that controls monetary issues. They also like their economy based on manufacturing and shipping. So, if you remember your colonies, when we did that, which area would focus on manufacturing and shipping? Hint, it is the New England area, or the North in our states. And also, they are supported by lawyers, merchant manufacturers, and the clergy, the more wealthy and middle class. On the other side, you have what is known as the Democratic Republicans. Sometimes you hear them be called the Jeffersonian Democrats or the Jeffersonian Republicans. They're the same things. We just call them Democratic Republicans or the Dem Rebs because it just is easier for everyone. They are led by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. They believe in a limited national government. To quote Jefferson and Ronald Reagan, they say that the government that governs least governs best. They also fear the idea of rule by one or by a few powerful people. They want to increase voting rights. They want more people to vote than less. While the Federalists are more concerned of having people who are uneducated voting, which would be a major issue because it would sway elections, and you need an education system to make sure that the mob rule doesn't occur. So it's kind of interesting that one is more supporting everyone, while one supports more of the educated class. Kind of interesting. They also, the Democratic Republicans also have a strict interpretation or construction of the Constitution, which more or less means that they only want to do what the government says. If it is not stated directly inside of the Constitution, the government does not have that power. Please make sure you remember that for when we talk about Thomas Jefferson in the next chapter. They also oppose the national bank because they do not think that the government should manipulate the economy to do things. So, Federalists, yay national bank. Dem Rebs, boo national bank. They want the economy based on farming, which means that they're going to have a lot of support in the South and in the western areas of the United States. And some middle class, including the tradespeople, who would actually prefer less government intervention in their trade. So this is part 1 of 7.3. Make sure that you continue 7.3 part 2 in the next vlog. And as always, don't forget to be awesome.